Welcome back to Modern Physics Radio for our second installment, an interview with Russ Pope. Russ is an artist, designer, producer, skater, family man, and much more. He can simultaneously work on a massive brand campaign for Vans while at the same time be working on his own art exhibit. The man is a worker, and we were stoked to chat with him amongst his busy schedule.
The references were great. I was like, okay, I'm doing this thing, and I was trying to remember back. I'm like, what exactly are we even talking about today? I'm like, I don't know. It'll be a surprise when we get there, but it's all good.
Right on. Yeah. We started a brand as kind of like a passion project for ourselves. It's called Modern Physics. And yeah, like I have a full-time job. I work for a school district. Um, this is just stuff that we are doing on the side that because we're both creatives, we both like making stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so it's an apparel brand, but we're also making like I got a zine, like we make zines, we're making like sort of podcasts, like we'll turn the audio of this into a podcast.
Yep.
Um, yeah,
Whatever feels good.
yeah, we're just trying it all out and just trying to put cool stuff out there, you know?
Nice.
Yeah.
That makes
So,
sense.
yeah, so we're just having fun and we're just super stoked that you're willing to do this.
Totally willing to do it.
Yeah, right on. So just I don't interview a lot of people, so I apologize ahead of time if you're getting a lot of redundant questions that you've answered in other interviews. Um, but
I
yeah, I think our audience would be stoked to hear some of that stuff again.
That inevitably happens, and I like I think there was maybe a time when I was like, man, I wish somebody would ask something different. But then I did at one point I was like, you know what, man? Like most people don't see the things other people see. Like you assumed it just because you've answered a question once before that everybody heard that answer.
Yeah,
I think most of the time that is not the case. So I don't think it's weird when people ask the same questions because people want to know that stuff anyway.
right on.
So
Cool.
don't worry about that.
Right on.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, like I was doing a little bit of research and I actually came across like a video or an interview saying you lived in Laguna Beach for a period of time.
Yeah, I actually lived in Laguna Hills, right up the canyon from Laguna Beach. So we
Oh,
lived on like the west side of the five, like right off of La Paz. Like if you went to La Paz and you went like towards like yeah, basically if you we were a straight shot to gosh. Anyway, we were it was a real close run up the canyon up to
oh,
Main Beach, basically.
okay, right. Yeah, I
You know
grew
where
up
Lisa
there.
Woods is?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So we were right by Lisa Woods and that little area back over there, Nellie Gale, and kind of
Mhm.
nestled in between those two things and that old like 60s suburbia right there.
Right on. Yeah, I grew up in Laguna Beach, so I was
But
like,
you
oh,
know right where we're at then. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
We're at, yeah. Yeah.
right on. All right. So I'm just going to jump right on into some of these.
Yeah.
For those that are unfamiliar with you, where are you? Where are you from, and what do you do?
I am now I'm in coastal New Hampshire. So it's New England. It's a little bit of New Hampshire that sits right above Massachusetts and right below Maine. So if you went like 15 minutes either way, you'd hit Massachusetts to the south and Maine to the north. It's just a little fingerling of New Hampshire that squeezes out and touches the ocean. So that's where I'm at. We're in a town called Exeter, so like 15 minutes from the water. And this like, if you looked up quintessential New England town, chances are you'd see a town that looks just like mine. It's right by Phillips Exeter has like two academies that are sort of famous with like a Louis Kahn library and stuff. That's like a mile from my house. It's a pretty cool old spot. Where am I from? We did 12 years in Laguna Hills before moving here. Before that, we were in like Monterey, Santa Cruz area, and then San Luis Obispo. My kids and wife were all born in Los Osos, in San Luis Obispo Hospital, but we live in Los Osos, right in the bay. So that zone,
Right on.
yeah.
And what is it that you do? I mean, I know you're an artist, you're a skater, but how would you describe your vocation, what you do?
Yeah, I mean, like, gosh, I work on a lot of creative projects. That's usually the way I describe it. And like, both, so I work on stuff for my personal, like, I guess if you call it an art career, I have every year I have multiple gallery shows that I'm always making stuff for. I do a bunch of like, commercial projects for different folks, and usually I collaborate with the same people kind of over and over again. Because it's what feels best to me is people that I wind up having good relationships with, and I'll wind up doing several collabs with and for them, whether it's a wine company or a ski or snowboard company or whatever, like stuff like that. And then I have a small little skateboard company called Transportation Unit that I make stuff for. It's about quarterly, so 4 times a year I do a graphic refresh and we release a new like pot of product every, 4 months or so. And then I always call it keeping a desk. I almost always have like a desk someplace at like a larger corporation that I'm do like a substantial like marketing slash like global brand work for. So I did it for Converse for about almost 10 years, and before that was Advance for a long time, and right now I'm doing it for Saucony, so the running shoe brand. So I do work on all their like heat and collaborations and globally for like if we go to Fashion Week, I put together all the Fashion Week stuff for that and try to figure out who we're going to bring along with us to do cool stuff and have shows with the guys from Czarface and you know make films, that kind of thing. And I
Cool.
do it like one because it's good for the money, two
Yep.
because it's good for the insurance, and three because I love working on the projects. So like as long as the people are cool, it's like it allows me to wind up. I just call it like redistribution of wealth. So you're taking money from a large corporation and you're employing all your favorite creative buddies. So it winds up being a good way to make sure that you can spread some large corporations' money across some smaller creative folks' pockets. So
That's cool.
yeah.
Awesome. So like taking it back a little bit, so you kind of grew up in the skate industry, from what I've seen, as a team writer, kind of a content creator, starting your own brands and joining already established ones. Was that, did you see that as, did you have like a goal in mind to go along a certain path? Or was it just something that sort of these various career stops were things that popped up organically?
Um, I'd say it's a combo of both, right? So like I always loved making pictures, drawing stuff since I was a little kid. About the same, my dad made me my first skateboard when I was 5, and I feel like I started making drawings. I can remember making drawings when I was 5. So both of them about the same time. They just never stopped. So I was like organic in that way that there were things I always liked to do, and then wound up getting sponsored and doing some traveling for skateboarding and meeting people, and then inevitably the sponsors that you have are like, hey, you actually know how to make drawings. It'd be cool if you feel like making a zine with us for that we're working on right now, or do you want to make a shape or make a graphic? Yes. So I got to take photos and film for stuff, but also was interested in shooting the photos and filming the people. So I learned how to, make videos as well as, like at the same time that I was, filming some clips here and there for folks. And my time period was not so much filming clips. It was more still imagery, less video was like less prominent when I feel like I was better at riding my skateboard. It wasn't as much of a thing as it is today, so but yeah, that was a nice segue into working for people like the small companies that I rode for, and then those turned into bigger companies, like NHS, and was able to got there at the right time, and they had openings that they that I pushed my way in. That wasn't easy. Didn't say come on and do whatever you want to do. I definitely was very assertive and aggressive about wanting to be part of it. But because of that, and because the timing was good, I was able to do some cool things like be a team manager of SMA and Speed Wheels for a chunk of time, which is like, I look back on it now, I felt like, yeah, of course I'm doing that. But then now looking back, I'm like, I had no right to have those titles and have the budget and be doing the things I was doing. They're like, here's a camera and you go roll off, there's a dark room, you go roll off film, and here's a couple notes on how you shoot photos, and here's you have an account at the photo lab, you can go develop photos there, and you got to build an ad and then drive it on up to high speed and make sure it gets to Thrasher on time next week. And I was like, I don't even know how to do this shit, but I guess we're doing it. Like, so it
Yeah.
was really good timing, and they let me start Creature, which turned into, me leaving Creature and then wanting to start my own, skateboard company called Scarecrow. And anyway, it was a lot of lucky breaks, I think, and then hard work for sure, and being aggressively getting after it. But I think that it's pretty fortunate to be at the right place at the right time, and you know, it got some lucky breaks for sure.
Yeah, I feel like so much of like advancing in a career is just speaking for myself, like, is just kind of faking it till you make it, sort of. And like as a teacher, there's you go into it, you do all this like coursework to get to be a teacher, and then
Yeah.
you get in the classroom and it's like, okay, blank slate, you don't really know what you're doing, and you gotta pretend like you do
Yeah.
until you finally are like, okay, now it's like muscle memory. Uh,
Yeah.
do you find that to be sort of similar with how you like got some of your opportunities?
Yeah, I think I was just too like excited about making things to even take a step back and go like, wait a minute, this is the big deal. You're going to spend X amount of dollars or work with all these people and build this thing that's going to be distributed, what's called a video, like an SMA video. And the last one was done by this really famous person. And all of a sudden you think you can do that. I never even thought like, what makes me think I can do this? I was just like, yeah, I want to do that. I'm going to do it. So it's like it kind of some of it was yeah, I mean naivete, or just yeah, I'm not even sure what made me think that it would be an okay thing or appropriate to do. I just wanted to do it, so I figured out how to do it. So it was just like you said, it was less of faking it. It was like I would do research and ask people and talk, just go for it and see what happens. Bump along, made our way through it. I think it was yeah, people just I was so fortunate to have people give a the opportunity. I think now, like I said before, I've when I was in the moment, I always thought of as, yeah, of course I'm going to do this. Why wouldn't I do this? But now looking back and giving other folks opportunities, I'm like somebody, and I know who those somebodies were. Were like, this is crazy, but we're going to let them just go for it. Somebody had to say that and was like, we'll see what happens. And luckily, it worked out. So I had just had a decent track record, so they kept letting me do things.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's speaking of
Yeah,
I don't know. I was watching a video about you talking about starting Creature, and was that felt like a very creative, a particularly creative moment in uh your life where you were getting Pantone color matches and doing all sorts of cool stuff with like monster films. Could you talk a little bit more about the what it was like starting Creature?
sure. I was doing SMA, so like, and I had these Santa Monica Airlines, and I had these weekly meetings with Skip Ingblom, which, didn't even fully appreciate until many years later how special it was that I had this relationship with Skipper, who was one of the founders of, he's in the Dogtown movie. Everyone sees Skip and all the things he'd done. And I knew all that, but I never taken into consideration. He was this cocky young dude. And it was like, I was thankful, but at the same time, I was like, I don't want to do Skip stuff. I want to do my own shit. And so I was really into, since I was a little kid, into monster movies, original stuff like old Hammer horror and Universal Pictures. And when I was little, they had this thing called the Monster Mash that came on like Saturday mornings, like cartoons basically. And this guy would come out and they'd play Boris Bobby Pickett song. He did the Monster Mash, and this dude in the monster suit would dance to a record, and they'd play an old black and white horror film. And so like all that stuff, I just loved it. And then the cool posters and like you said, the colors that went along with it, and the fonts, monster fonts and shit like this. It was just always something I was into. So at one point, I told the guys in NHS I was going to quit, and they said why, and I said because I'm going to start my own company. It's going to be this monster themed thing, all this, and I do it here. And so it's like another one of those things where they're like, you don't have to go anywhere, you can do this here. And they let me do it. So I mean, I could literally made I called it the creature cave. Like I butcher papered off a certain area of NHS so no one could see in to keep it all top secret. It's like I don't want to use your distributors, don't want to use your art department. Want to have it be our own fresh thing. Want to break away from they've been using the same distributors since the 70s. We want to use newer, fresher distribution channels and just have it feel like it was something separate from all the NHS shit, even though the NHS stuff, Santa Cruz Skateboards, etc., was always my favorite as a kid. So, but I don't know if that's what you were looking for. That was the kind of the thought behind it was do all this stuff like real traditional horror film style graphics, all pumped through one person using this, color palette that's defined by, faded out horror film posters, keeping track of those colors, always returning to them, being very consistent. And at the time too, the shapes we made were much bigger. Then that was the ultimate, like the 90s when everything had gotten so small. People were riding 7.5 to 7 and 7/8. We made 8 8-inch boards and 8.5-inch boards, as well as like some 7 7/8 boards too. But like we made shaped boards, and no one was really making shaped boards then. We even made like I took a Dwayne Peters board and stretched it to 32 from 30 and kind of used that as the basis of the shape. Made a 32 by 10 and called it the Mummy, and had to buy old 169s because the foundry didn't even make them. NHS was independent, but they didn't even have them. So I had to find them in the UK that were sitting on the warehouse floor of a distributor, bought them back from the UK and had them flown back to make these completes with these 60 millimeter wheels and 169s and
So,
stuff like that. No one was doing it, but everyone was like, "Oh shit, this is cool," and got excited about it. So it wound up working. But it was everybody else was on skinny boards and little wheels and big pants, you know?
yep. Yep. I remember those days.
Yeah,
Yeah, so switching gears a little bit, I want to talk a little about your painting, your art career. I mean, it's all kind of hand in hand, right? But
sure.
uh, how and when did you get into painting?
Um, I had an uncle that was a painter, an oil painter. So when I was a kid, like I'd say like the first time he ever took a moment with me, and like he used to have this painting zone set at my grandparents' house, and he set me up with like a little easel next to his easel and kind of walked me through the process and helped me do some painting. And that was, I would say, I think it was junior high. When I got to high school, they still had, I'm old enough that they still had like ROP programs, like regional occupational programs, you know? So it's like you could apply to be in like ROP printmaking, you know, and you'd actually would work with a Heidelberg printer and they'd teach you how to, clean and maintain the Heidelberg printers and, do printing, offset printing. Fine arts, same thing. So I did both of those. I did photo and I did fine arts. And I had this teacher in high school there was like 11 of us in the class, and she was a painter, and she like spent the time with us, all the way up through our final senior year. The goal was to make a portfolio that you could use for admissions to college. There was supposed to go to a juried show at the end of the year where you could win scholarship monies for the local community college. So it kind of took us through the whole process of, like being an artist and working on your work and first critiques and collecting a body that was destined for some place to show, all that sort of thing. So I got that. I was lucky. I got that in, high school, which I don't think kids get the out. They may, and I just don't know, but I don't think they do. Anyway, so all that went to the local San Luis Obispo Museum of Art, and I won a scholarship. Which I mean, when I say won a scholarship, it was $200. I think I won $200 in credit to the local community college, but it was big. It felt huge, like.
Yeah,
Anyway, so that was the kind of the kickoff for it, and I just sort of never stopped after that, so
right, for sure. Did you go to the community college for a bit
yeah,
for
yep,
classes? And did you go
totally.
beyond community college? Did you go to art school?
No.
No.
At one point, I applied and I couldn't afford, to go, so it wasn't an option. I did let's see, 4 years of night school, so I accumulated basically what I needed to transfer to a 4 year, 2 years worth of education. Like going while I was working at NHS doing all the creature stuff, I'd go to school at night for fine arts. And then after I started Creature, we came to a semester where I was supposed to either jump in a tour van and do a 5 week long Creature tour or start my next semester of courses. And I canceled all my courses and went on that tour and then never took another class. And then the next time I visited the college campus was as a guest speaker. For I did some guest speaker stuff for Parsons and Pratt and the UMass Amherst and Harvard Extension here and stuff. So I've done a bunch of that now. But yeah, didn't ever go back to college until I started speaking at them to their senior graduating classes, like about design and painting and fine arts and stuff. Yeah.
That's awesome. Um, so some like different words that pop in my head when I'm taking a look at your artwork.
Mm.
Um, there's a few. One of the words that I don't know, I'm not sure why it sits with me so much, but it's nostalgia.
Mm.
When I look at some of your pieces, maybe it's the beach ones in particular, just because I grew up at the beach, like beach is kind of my life, right?
Yeah,
But
same here.
there's a nostalgia to your artwork, and I can't place like what it's reaching back to in my own personal life, but I definitely feel that sense of nostalgia. And some other words that pop up: carefree, funny, and negative space, more from the art design perspective, but negative
Yeah.
space definitely pops up a lot. How would you describe your painting style?
Um, It's funny. I have a gallery that I show with. It does all like basically handles all my stuff in like Western Europe. It's Antonio Colombo Gallery in Milan. I show with him almost every year. And he like at one point they had this critic, this Italian critic was like, you're a modern impressionist. And I was like, oh, that's very interesting. I never heard that before. So he's up. No, you have a like a dry brush, this very painterly hand, and these color palettes are reminiscent of, but it's more reductive. It's a reduced version of. But it's funny because like even in the paintings, like my favorite illustrators are like Ronald Searle or Sal Steinberg. Um, it's God, even like Hockney drawings and stuff like that. But I like things that and I think it all comes from like doing live nudes, like and you would have do these 30-second, 60-second exercises where you try to capture the essence of a person or emotion with as few lines as possible, as quick as you possibly could. So like I think of that when I'm making paintings and things too, like. Usually, if I have overworked stuff and I've simplified my paintings and the amount of stuff and the backgrounds, like I said, giving more breathing room and compositions are more simple and less cluttered as I've gotten older. It's just a effort to constantly, but even like Toulouse-Lautrec, too, big inspiration, but like trying to reduce to what you really want to get across. If it's a gesture of someone dancing, or it's a funny moment, or it's a painful moment, or it's um how can you tell that story with as few lines as possible? And sometimes it's not even lines, sometimes it's color or like the position on the paper that sets the tone or the mood. So just being thoughtful about all that stuff. It seems very simple, but like the less you put down, the more thoughtful you have to be about what you put down, if that makes sense.
It totally does. Yeah, I remember I went to Cal State Long Beach for an art ed bachelor's, and one of the things for that program was their art ed program was really, really strong
Yeah.
because they really forced these prospective teachers into the arts. You had to show a portfolio at the end. It was very much arts based. And one of the things that I loved about it was getting to do those life drawing classes and doing those 30-second, 60-second drawings.
Yeah.
Because for me, I overthink. I tend to overthink a lot of things. It took all that overthinking out of the picture, and I just had to commit.
Yeah.
And I always loved what I came up with in those 30, 60-second drawings, way more than the stuff that I put a bunch of time into.
Yes.
Yeah.
That
They're
that
just
makes sense. Yeah. It's a lot of almost everything I do starts from something I saw for real. Like all my work, I would say, is reportage, so it's like it's just my life in pictures. It's a visual diary of the shit I see and hear. Like I'll make a drawing to get a set of words captured with a drawing when they really were words. They weren't of something I saw, of something I heard, or the opposite. I'll see something and it's like either sometimes I take a photograph and bring it back and then work off of that. But if I can make a drawing on the spot, if it's really quick, that all that stuff has served me well, and it's if I catch myself getting too busy with things, sometimes I'll do, three, four, and five versions of it with transparency. I work like when I do illustrations, I do like an old school, like a Disney Studio animator with transparencies, like vellums on top of each other. And I actually will do multiple versions until I've simplified it down to something that feels better than the overcomplicated version. Even though it's like a solidly drafted drawing, if it starts feeling like, hey, you're a great draftsman, if like that feels more left-brained and less right-brained and maybe a little wrong, needs to get broken and freed up a little bit.
mhm, mhm. You mentioned some of the people that you would compare. I'm not sure if you are saying you would compare your artwork to it or other people have compared your artwork to it, but like Toulouse-Lautrec, like I totally see that.
Yeah.
Hockney, even though Hockney is wildly different than Toulouse-Lautrec, I
Yeah.
can also see that. And I'm two very kind of two very different artists, but I can
Yeah.
see both of their influence in your work. Who are some other artists that you take inspiration from?
I really like Alex Katz's work. And it didn't come to me until later in life. There's a whole community of people that work in Maine that are New Yorkers that spend half the year up in Maine or more. He's one of them. He's still, excuse me, still spends a bunch of time that way. I mean, honestly, like there's the like I said, the Steinbergs and the no one ever thinks about like a Steinberg painting or even a Ronald Searle painting. I think they wound up being thought of for New Yorker covers and things like that.
Mhm.
But they had a robust, fine art career outside of their illustration stuff too, which is weird to me still that some people want to call illustration doesn't qualify as fine arts. But yeah, th those two, as far as just the brevity of line, even in a painting or whatever. But yeah, I'd say to a Picasso. It's just so corny. I always say that, people are like, "Hey, who's inspirational?" I said, still to this point, I know he's an asshole, misogynist, he's a horrible human. Yes, all those things. And he's everywhere and he's been overexposed, but it wasn't his fault. He died and his family made money off of his estate. It's like, but I still think that I never have seen anything he did ever that I wasn't like, oh geez, that's great. Like always, it's like, oh gosh, that's really good. And then the experimentation of the areas that people don't even know he with his etchings and some people are familiar with his pottery work, or certain portions of his pottery work. He did so much. It was crazy.
Mhm.
And then I have a group of folks that work today, that are friends, like Chris Johansson's, Jason Yeagle, Jean Julien, Nathaniel Russell, guys that I talk to regularly that are super inspirational for me. Just, one because of their work ethic, but two, that their actual stuff they make is really inspirational. It's like they make good stuff. Like, it's a pretty robust group of people that I look to that are still worth Stefan Marks. Lots of folks that I think are making really, really wonderful work that gets me excited, which is I'm so lucky that I feel like I'm so lucky that I'm inspired by people who are still kicking and making stuff. It's cool to
Yeah,
only not have to only look at dead people's work.
right. All right. Just a couple more for you. Are there particular brushes or paints that you constantly go back to? Um,
Mhm.
Inks, etc. What does your kind of gear look like?
Yeah, I yes. And then there's like inks when I'm doing these. I don't know if you ever saw if you go to like my Instagram and like videos or whatever. There's sometimes these things I call morning workouts where I use ink and a nib pen, and I'll actually use the blotter from I'm looking for the stuff in my desk. Sorry. I'll use these Sumi inks, these Japanese inks, right? But then I use the FW makes these nice blotters. So you actually squeeze them and dollop them almost like a medicine that you would give to
Yeah,
yourself or whatever. So I actually will I like this ink better than this ink. So I use this dolloper into these inks and then you actually spray them and then you can drag them around. It's a glass tip like suction cup thing. I
yeah.
use that for really fast drawing and then I'll go back in with a nib pen and hit stuff, like an old school nib pen, like these guys.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so those are the inks I use when I'm doing ink stuff. And
Uh-huh.
then brushes, it's funny because brushes I'm like I literally will like I have all these nicer brushes, but my favorite brushes are crap like this. Like these are like these disposable, depending on like sometimes they're made all over the place, but they're just these horsehair brushes, and I have them in all the sizes.
Mhm.
Because I like when I'm painting, most of the stuff I keep it fairly dry, or even if when it's wet you just move fast with them and I use them and I have certain ones that wind up being like, depending on what line I want to get. I don't know if you see this one, they just wind up working their way into this is the same brush. This one's worked its way into this shape, this one's worked its way into this shape. So when I want this line, this is what I go to. And this line or in that amount of detail, I hit those. And
That's
then I
right.
have nicer brushes for more detail. And then I think I like these Italian ones. Whenever I go to Italy, I always load up on these guys, and they come in every size from this size to like I have ones that are like this big around and they're like this long. Anyway, yeah. So I wound up having favorites, that just wind up that I can't get rid of, and I just keep on taking the best care I can of them to try to make them work as long as possible because it's sad when one dies.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any of your morning workout drawings like nearby that you
Uh,
wouldn't mind showing?
Maybe. Let me
Yeah.
see. I might have one in a flat file over there. Let's look. Here's one. An example of it. But
No worries if you don't. It's just a curious question.
this is kind of a shitty example. I'll just use it real quick though.
Yeah.
This one's no nib pen, but this is the a good example of the blotter.
Oh
You see,
yeah.
so it's like this is just all the glass, and then usually I'll go through and there'll be some really fine, detailed stuff in there too with that nib pen. So one juxtaposing the other, right? So you'll see
Uh-huh.
that real rough, loose stuff, and then I'll come in and there'll be some tight faces and a really
Yeah.
detailed handbag on somebody, or the bird has feathers and that sort of thing. And then it's a nice to be able to work with letters with those nib pens too. So you get the idea. But there's a whole bunch of like you go to Reels on Instagram. If
Mhm.
you were to go to my Instagram account and look at Reels, there's a shitload of like it's like they're usually 5 minutes or less, but it's a time lapse of the whole thing. Kind of fun.
Right on. I see a
Yeah.
lot of like I saw you using Japanese inks.
Mhm.
And we mentioned a bunch of uh US artists, but maybe some European artists, but I see a lot of like Japanese influence in your work as well, especially
Lot.
with the brush strokes, the way the brush strokes are kind of what I want to say there's a particular style of Japanese artwork. Um, anyway, I can't think of the specific name, but I definitely see a Japanese influence.
I get that often. I spend a lot of time. I try to go there every year. Also, I'm going to spend the last 10 days in November there too. I got a show in Kyoto.
Nice.
Um, I have good friends who like Yusuke Hanai. He's a artist in Japan, just outside of Tokyo too. Who's a good buddy, and he's an influence for sure. But um, I think yeah, probably Japan in general is a big influence. With the smartness of the tools, and I do have a bunch of Japanese brushes and Japanese brush tip pens that I like to use. These portable ones that you pack full, and the Japanese inks, etc. But just I think this is, I mean, I'm generalizing, which probably isn't an appropriate thing to do, but most folks in Japan are very thoughtful and smart about space conservation, even in their living, because his living quarters are very small. Everything is clean and tidy and well thought through. So I think that can become super anal retentive and maybe could get too tight. So you actually need to, you have to have the California that mixes in with that too, to break it up. But I think using that for a inspiration as far as being, thoughtful and smart about, what you do, what you're doing, understanding it, like if taking time to slow down and see, actually see things too. That's a big one, seeing things and bringing it back. But as you reassemble, and yeah, Japanese tools, all that. Yeah, I think you're right, and I know what you're talking about, but I also don't know what that's called. But I always have people bring that up. So it is called something, and I do have lots of gifts from Japanese friends in my studio. So
Right
I'd
on.
say Japan and Italy are the two biggest places that I export my work to.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right on. Just a few more because we good old Zoom's running out of time on us.
Yeah.
But I speaking of California, you grew up here or
Mhm.
I'm here, but did you get into surfing at all? Especially because like, you worked with the Van surf team, I believe,
Yep.
for a period of time. So I was curious if you were into surfing at all.
Totally. We spent probably 5 days a week at the beach, like as a family. I have two kids and wife, and that was our favorite special place to be. I'm the world's worst surfer. But yeah, I've, spent time in the water, spend just as much time like on, surf mats and body surfing or even on boogie boards. But I have like a traditional like 50s log that, I hasn't been out of, we've been here 10 years, hasn't really come out of my garage much since we've been here. But we spent a lot of time north of the San Clemente Pier, like at 204s or down actually at Thalia.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're kind of our spots.
I'm kind of the flip version of that, where I'm world's worst skater. I like Jack Black. I can't do a kickflip. I can't do an ollie, but I love to skate.
Yeah. Yeah, I love being in the water. Yeah, for whatever reason, it's just never, I've never spent the time to become excellent.
Yeah,
Uh, I'm, yeah, mediocre at best. So, but I'm happy in the water.
right
And
on.
I do a lot of stuff. I wound up doing stuff for, I've done a whole bunch of stuff for Pilgrim and Mollusk, and I'm doing some stuff for the reintro of Surfer magazine right now for the Surfer guys too.
All right. So last couple questions here. What are you working on currently, and what's next for you? What do you plan on doing next?
Yeah. I'm doing, let's see. So I've just finished a couple new boards for one of those drops for transportation unit that's on the production side of things. I have that art show coming up in Kyoto. I have a solo show during Art Week in Berlin next year in April at Heavyweight Gallery, which is pretty excited. And I just got that like I don't know 4 weeks ago, so I'm excited and nervous because it's such a short amount of time. Usually I have, for a solo show, I spend 3/4 of a year making work for it,
Yeah.
and I don't have that, and it's going to be busy between now and then for me with all the other stuff I have going, so it's going to be kind of wild.
Yeah.
So really, it's just I have 1 week to finish up all my stuff for Japan and ship that, and then starting right away on that stuff for heavyweight. Um, let's see what else. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have a bunch of small projects. There's a local brewery that I like to make. I like beer, and so I make me little fun projects making beer can stuff, and I do some stuff with the guys at Stan Ray every once in a while for apparel stuff, and yeah, just little things like that. And then some projects with Saucony guys. We're making some films and have some stuff coming up with some collaborators and all that. So working on some big actually they're not little films, they're big films with big budgets, like telling the story of Saucony through all their collaborators and family members and stuff. So working on some bigger projects with bigger budgets with like multiple DPs and photographers and budgets to go places and stuff like that. So a lot going on.
Awesome. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah,
What's
thanks.
your favorite beer?
The Liar's Bench is this little brewery. They have a really great little chef, and they make us small batch beers in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So, outside of that, I would say it's like probably like Rainier or Narragansett or
Yeah.
Olympia, crappy light beers, that are easy drinkers.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's a couple wine companies that I do some stuff with too. I do some stuff with the Zio Baffa guys. I don't know if you know who those guys.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's actually kind of surf based, but it's one of the old. It's the grapes come from one of the oldest Italian wineries, but they're done at San Diego. I think it was Zia Baffa, and then these guys at BK Wines in Australia. So
Cool. All
yeah,
right. I think that's about it. Where can
cool.
people buy your work? And do you have anything you want to
Yeah, I mean
plug?
they can always go to like DM me on Instagram, or like there's a talk to Russ button on my website at russpope.com. And if they're looking for paintings, I have like gallery spaces that I usually refer people to for that stuff. If I have someone in LA and someone in Japan and someone in Western Europe.
Yep.
But I do commissions and stuff too, and I always have like small printables, like nice hand pulled and small batch and signed like prints, things like that. Some small T-shirts in here, and it runs of T-shirts and stuff on my website, so I can get that kind of stuff there.
All right.
Or my
Awesome.
transportation unit stuff. That's all my art too on skateboard gear.
Transportation. Right on.
Yeah,
Cool. I think that'll do it for us. I really
awesome.
appreciate you taking the time to do this.
No sweat. If you have any follow-ups, you need anything, just let me know.
For sure. All
And it's
right.
nice meeting
Awesome.
you.
Nice to meet you too. All
Good.
right.
Have a good rest of your weekend.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Yeah. Bye.
See ya.